Welcome to a Sirius XM radio presentation. Tonight, Ron Bennington interviews director George Romero. And now from the XM studios in New York City, your host, Ron Bennington.
Good evening. Tonight we're going to talk with one of the legendary directors of modern horror. George Romero first came into prominence when he co-wrote and produced Night of the Living Dead. Shot on a small budget, it went on to become one of the most celebrated horror films of all time. Romero cemented his place in the genre with such films as Dawn of the Dead, Land of the Dead, Day of the Dead, and Creepshow. Tonight he's here to talk about his career and the impact his work has had on a generation of horror fans. Stay tuned as Ron Bennington interviews George Romero. People are so excited about having you stop by. You're here for the at the convention in town, right? How does that work out for you? Everybody who is a zombie fan, a horror film fan, shows up. What does your audience look like when you get to meet them?
Well, many of them look like zombies because they. In fact, some of the people that do merchandise for my films, they have T-shirts out, and on the front it says "Fast zombies suck" and "Slow zombies." On the back it says "Slow zombies rules."
The fact is, too, didn't you kind of the way that zombies work today is really a George Romero creation. What we think of as a zombie, you really invented that character, right?
I guess I can be blamed for it. Yeah, I mean, I never called them zombies in the first film.
Is that right?
I made four of these films in this series, and the first film I called them flesh eaters or ghouls, and I never. Because when I was growing up, zombies were those guys in the Caribbean, you know, that
right,
were picking cotton for Lugosi.
Yeah.
And so I never thought of them as zombies initially.
What were they to you? They were just the undead.
For the undead, yeah. Flesh eaters.
Now, how did you come up with the idea for that film? You did a very, very shoestring budget, right?
Oh yeah, man. We had a little commercial production company, you know, beer commercials, industrial film. And so we had the equipment and said, well, why don't we try to make a flick? And I basically ripped the idea off from a Richard Matheson novel called I Am Legend. And he used vampires, so I made them ghouls.
Right.
And I really thought of them as ghouls. I never thought of them as zombies.
And now that character is, I mean, they're almost the new vampires. I mean, they're used so much now. And particularly there's something about that character for younger kids. They get a real kick out of that, right? Yeah,
and I can't quite identify why.
Yeah.
And my stuff has a shelf life. I mean, I go to these things and I have 60-year-old people coming around who are fans, and I got 12-year-olds that are fans.
Yeah.
Because of video has kept the stuff on the shelf, you know.
And the kids like the independent film now, which it wasn't even called that when you started it, right?
No, I don't think they even knew the word.
Right. I mean, because you should not attempt to make a film in Pittsburgh with no money and no way to distribute it before. I mean, somebody should have talked you guys out of this idea.
Somebody should have.
Yeah.
I wish I had a wiser, a smarter uncle. You know, who said, don't put your money in this, kid. Use somebody else's money.
So, how did you distribute it first? Did it just go out one city at a time?
No. We actually got a distributor. We literally threw it in the trunk of the car. You know, in those days there were film labs in cities the size of Pittsburgh because the news was on film.
I didn't even think of that. That is true. So because the news was shot on film, you'd have a place to go.
Yeah, laboratories and finishing places where you could finish and all that. So we literally finished the film in Pittsburgh and threw it in the trunk of the car and drove it to New York.
So you were by the time you got the whole thing shot and done and ready to go, how much money had you guys invested?
We had spent $70,000 in cash, in money that we actually had, and we owed. Well, the total came in at around 114, so we owed whatever the difference is. There were $45,000 or something, and we paid it off. I mean, the movie actually returned money in its first year,
which had to be so exciting for you guys.
Incredible.
Right?
Well, yeah, but it also convinced us that this was an easy business, which it's not. So, we promptly went out and made 3 more films that just, went right into the toilet.
Is that right?
Yeah. I resisted doing horror, and we tried to do more high-minded stuff,
right?
That you can't do without stars and in
exactly.
Pittsburgh. And, but even those films are, they're all out on video now, and they all have sort of a little bit of a following. So we've been pretty lucky. I've had this amazingly, I don't know, very lucky sort of under the radar career,
Where do you live now?
Right now I'm living in Toronto.
Any reason at all is it for movie purposes or?
Well, I shot my last 2 films I shot in Toronto, and I have, so most of my friends right now are, people that I work with are up there, and I just decided to love it up there. But I never lived, I grew up in New York, in the Bronx, went to Pittsburgh to go to college and stayed there, lived there.
Were you Carnegie Mellon or?
Carnegie Mellon, yeah. And I lived there up until, 2 years ago.
And that was always a kind of an artist-type community, right? I mean, there's a lot of great actors that come out of that school and filmmakers.
Yes, yeah, wonderful theater school. And I didn't. I went in as a painting and design major, and then transferred to theater. And I was no good. They didn't like my diction. They didn't like the way I stood like a tree. And so I left without graduating.
But painting and design, somewhat. I mean, I guess it had to help you aesthetically for what you ended up doing, right?
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I have somewhat of a visual sense from that, or a sense of composition. As I used to shoot, I actually shot Night of the Living Dead myself.
Yeah.
We had a little company, and everyone in the company were, everyone there was a filmmaker in his or her own right. We all did it all, recording and editing. And
the reason why you shot the horror film first is like, we don't need a big story, we don't need big stars, and you thought of that as a chance to go out and do other kind of films.
Yeah, exactly. We were hoping to, build on that.
But
it was in our minds, though. We were all 60s guys,
right?
And pissed off that the 60s didn't work. We didn't really change the world as much as we thought, and it didn't change it at all. So the film has a political side to it,
Right.
I'm all for my zombie films, and the zombies are almost an excuse for me to make a movie about something else.
We'll take some phone calls too. Rick has a good one. I want to put you on with Mr. George Romero. How you doing, Rick?
Hello?
Yes, how are you?
Yeah, okay. Mr. Romero.
Hi, Rick.
Yeah, I talked to you about 15 years ago on the subject of the mistakes that were in Dawn of the Dead, and you said you were going to look at them with that fat guy that had no makeup on that was smiling when he was going in. Did you ever look at that?
Yeah, I see it. I see a lot of that stuff in that movie now. I don't. We were just making a movie, man, with a lot of unprofessional, people that were just coming in for the lark of it, to be zombies. So,
and that's one of the stuff that people even like about those early films too, right? That they were real shot drive-in style.
Yeah, they're funky.
Yeah. Now, what was the film that you did with Ed Harris back in the early '80s? It was
it's a film called Night Riders.
Yeah.
Ed's still a great friend, a wonderful actor.
It's a terrific film too.
Thank you. And I like it a lot. I mean, it's a non-horror thing.
Right. People don't relate that normally to what they consider your style now. Yeah. But where did you come up with the idea for that film?
I wanted to do. It's a bit autobiographical, maybe. It's about somebody that's trying to do something outside the system, and the system keeps trying to pull him in. And he resists, and I did it sort of, it reflects the Camelot legends. And I originally wrote it like just one of these traditional Renaissance fairs, like the Society for Creative Anachronism or something. And then someone, as a joke, said, well, man, the only way you're going to get this made is if you put them on motorcycles. And at first I said, give me a break. And then I started to think about it, and I said, wow, maybe it's not such a bad idea. So that's what I did. I mean, someone just suggested.
And it was just a separate reality. That world was just where knights would be on motorcycles.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's an amazing, and Harris was amazing in it too. Yeah, and I don't. Was that his first film? Because I don't remember seeing him before then.
He had made he played the villain in a Charles Bronson movie called Borderline. I hadn't even come out yet when I first met Ed, and I met him at an audition.
Really strong, and I mean, you know it right away. It's so funny how some of those actors, they already have whatever they are right from the word go.
Ed certainly had that. He had it when he walked in the room.
Right.
I said, whoa, forget about it. You don't need to read anything. You don't need to hear sign this.
So the real theme for you in your work is you're still that outsider who's really not part of any system and
trying to be.
Not comfortable with the system.
Not comfortable with it at all. I mean, I fled. I did sort of, I call it my years of penance in Hollywood. I got involved in all these big development deals on some pretty big projects, and they just never got made into movies,
You kind of get paid while that's happening?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I made more money in that period than I've ever made.
Yeah, I have friends that went to L.A. and they're writing, and none of their stuff gets out, and they're kind of happy with their lifestyle, but nothing ever gets done. And I'm like, how much money is wasted in Hollywood every year on just...
I'm telling you, I've been in projects where they spent, up to almost $6 million with nothing happening.
And everybody's staying on the bench, really.
Yeah, developing it, shooting tests, designing sets and everything. Then the movie's unmakeable because now somebody finds that script 2 years later and says, "Oh, I'd like to make that." And they say, "Oh, yeah, except you got to pay us $6 million."
Right, that's what we put into it.
That's what we put into it. And so, basically the stuff disappears.
And you did the projects with Stephen King. How did you and he hook up?
Did a couple of those. Well, we hooked up, actually, Warner Brothers set up a meeting for us when they were going to do Salem's Lot as a theatrical film. And so we got together over that. And then Warner's decided to